tofauti tunaanza. This is an evening session. It was not envisaged in the constitution.
A sitting is a sitting. The definition of a sitting. But they're coming. They are number coming.
Unless challenged. Like the old days. Unless a question has been raised.
Yes. Continue on. It would have been better if stayed like this. 20. This side. 20? 20.
Order, members. Order. 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 Honorable members, I now confirm that we have the prerequisite numbers for us to be able to start the business of the day. That is the evening sitting. Yes.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Very well. We have on order number 5, the leader majority to lay.
Honorable Speaker,
papers.
I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Tuesday, February the 18th, 2021, on the evening sitting. And these are all reports of the Auditor General and financial statements on donor-funded projects for the year ended 30th of June 2020 and the implementing agencies for each of those projects. Number 1, the multinational Arusha Holili Taveta Voi Road project by Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 2, the Nairobi Missing Link Roads and Non-Motorized Transport Facilities by Kenyan Urban Roads Authority. Number 3, the Mombasa Port Area Road Development Project by the Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 4, the Regional Roads Component, which is the Merile Marsabit Road Project, Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 5, Mombasa Nairobi Addis Ababa Road Corridor Project, Phase 2, that is the Marsabit Truby Road by Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 6, the Northern Corridor Rehabilitation Program, Phase 3, the Elder Talbot Webuya Malaba Road Improvement Project by the Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 7, the Northern Corridor Transport Improvement Project by the Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 8, Nuno Modagashi Road Project, the Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 9, the Nairobi Outer Ring Road Improvement Project, Kenya Urban Roads Authority. Number 10, the Kenya Nairobi Southern Bypass Project, Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 11, the Kenya-Nairobi Thika Highway Improvement Project, Lot 3, Government Concessional Loan Agreement with the Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 12, Nairobi Thika Highway Improvement Project, Lot 1 and 2, Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 13, the National Urban Transport Improvement Project, Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 14, the National Urban Transport Improvement Project, Kenya Urban Roads Authority. Number 15, the Portrees Moi International Airport Access, C110 Road. That is FIDIC EPC turnkey-based project by the Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 16, the Timboroa Eldoret Road Rehabilitation Project by Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 17, the Mombasa-Nairobi Addis Road Corridor Project Phase 3, that's Turbi Moyale Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 18, the Kenya Aviation Modernization Project, Preparation Advance number VO440, Kenya Airports Authority. Number 19, the Kenya Transport Sector Support Project by Kenya Airports Authority. Number 20, the Kenya Transport Sector Support Project by the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority. Number 21, the National Urban Transport Improvement Project, KRC component by the Kenya Railways Corporation. Number 22, the Mombasa West Integrated Roads Network Program, Phase 2, dualling of Magongo Road and expansion of Kipevu Road, Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 23, the Sirari Corridor Accessibility and Road Safety Improvement Project, and that's the Isebania Kisii Ahero A1 Road Rehabilitation Project by the Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 24, the Kapchorwa, Suam Kitale, and the Eldoret Bypass Roads Kenya Project by the Kenya National Highways Authority. Number 25, the East Africa Regional Transport, Trade and Development Facilitation Project by the Kenya National Highways Authority. And the number 26, Safe Roads Usalama Barabarani Program by the Kenya National Transport and Safety Authority. And lastly, number 27, the Kenya Towns Sustainable Water Supply and Sanitation Program, Rift Valley Water Works Development Agency. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. We allow the leader to lay the papers. Very well. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements. Order number 8, the referendum number 2 bill, National Assembly Bill number 14 of 2020, second reading, resumption of debate.
Very well. Honourable members, on order number 8, it's a resumption of debate, which was interrupted on the Tuesday, February 16th, 2021, the evening sitting. As far as my records are concerned, members, we had the Honourable Wilson Sosion, who was on the floor and had a balance of 6 minutes. So, Honourable Sosion, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Honourable Speaker. Before I was interrupted, I had underscored the importance of the people of Kenya exercising their sovereign power directly through referendum. Of course, indeed, the Kenya Constitution 2010 gave the people of Kenya the power to exercise their sovereignty directly and also through this House. Looking at the principle of governance and national values, our Constitution foresighted a situation where governance was going to be a key issue in this country. And looking at the context of the various countries even within the region, the biggest problem that we have after independence is good governance, democratic governance, and participation of the people. And indeed, Honorable Speaker, I wish to laud this country, the Republic of Kenya. When we compare ourselves with many countries in Africa, our level of democracy is one of the best in the world. And indeed, when we passed the Constitution of Kenya 2010, implementing various aspects that are envisaged in the Constitution should have been done through various statutes. One of them is a referendum. And so this referendum bill, to me, it is one aspect of implementing the various provisions of the Constitution, and particularly inviting the people to exercise their democratic rights and also engage in public participation. While Article 255 of the Constitution envisages referendum only in amending the Constitution, 256 and 257, we believe Kenya as a democracy has matured to a level that it can engage in referenda in other areas. And Honorable Speaker, looking at this bill, in Article 8, it is talking very clearly that a referendum may be conducted on the basis of an act of parliament which specifies the nature and purpose of the referendum. The nature and purpose of referendum, meaning we may not limit the people of Kenya to only conducting referenda on constitutional amendments, but it can be done in other aspects. And indeed, we have had 2 referenda. But with respect to this report of the Joint Committee of CIOC and JLAG, number 1, framing of referendum question will be key. And in fact, at the moment, people are questioning, people are debating, should we have multiple choice? Should we have one question? The most important thing is to have simple questions that the public can participate and exercise their sovereignty and their decisions well. So indeed, the framing of referenda questions will be very key. It's important to have simple and clear questions so that voting and taking decisions would be very easy. I also agree with the decision number 8 that we don't need regulations. IEBC should not make regulations. Honorable Speaker, a lot of legislation was enacted in this House to implement the Constitution. But we undid it by asking the state agencies to make regulations. And those regulations have been used to undermine the spirit and letters of the Constitution and also the law. I believe if we have a very good piece of legislation to guide the referendum, we will not need those regulations. A good law will enable Kenyans to exercise their sovereignty through the referenda. Honorable Speaker, the other aspect is the civic education. For people to exercise their independent and individual democratic decisions, a strong civic education on any item that is brought up by the proponents, whether it's an individual, it's a group, it is parliament, it's government, or it is the people themselves, it will be important to mount a working civic education system. And I would believe this act also will serve that purpose. Because when you look at it at the moment, the dimension that debates are taking in terms of referenda, sometimes we lose the very essential object, and we can end up defeating issues that are very essential. And then, Honorable Speaker, the cost of referenda. And I think this is the elephant in the house. We've seen arguments that a referenda is going to be expensive. It is billions of shillings. When we talk of referenda and elections in this country, it becomes a huge cost. We must think as a country how to make referenda cost-effective, convenient, and easy for the people. We've seen other democracies where they've gone into electronic voting system, and that electronic voting system makes it extremely cheap. We should not deny the people the opportunity to exercise their sovereign power by making referenda very, very expensive. And it should be as applicable to as many issues as possible. Honorable Speaker, I believe this bill is coming at the right time so that we can save on areas where we are losing. We can midwife democracy, and men and women have suffered in this country to ensure that we have a working democracy. At the moment, we may end up losing the independence of the judiciary. We may have the state agencies, constitutional commissions, they're also under capture. And I think the voice of the people would be very important. Honorable Speaker, I support this referendum bill, and I believe if worked on.
You've already consumed your 6 minutes. Let me have the member for Suba North, the Honorable Millie Odhiambo Maboda.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support the bill with amendments. Madam Speaker, I don't actually, having gone through the bill, I don't understand why it was very controversial, because it actually just strengthens what is in the Constitution. And as a House, we always have options to amend. If there's something we don't like, we amend. And so I really don't think there's anybody who generally, in principle, disagrees with the need for a referendum bill. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with, sorry, Madam Speaker. Having said that, I want to agree with Honorable Sosion that we have not taken into account some of the proposed amendments that I would be seeking myself, is that we have not proposed or taken into account Article 1(2) of the Constitution that recognizes that the people may exercise their sovereign power either directly or through their democratically elected representatives. Madam Speaker, should people say, for instance, want to determine whether they want to leave the East African community, when we are getting into that, the executive will go through the process through a treaty, and then it will come to Parliament. But should people decide that they don't want to go through Parliament and they want to do that on their own or getting out of the treaty, then they can actually then propose a referendum. But also on social issues like whether men should send fare. Madam Speaker, if Kenyans decided to do that on a light note, they should be able to do that, because those are some of the things that you can do directly. But having said that, Madam Speaker, also the other issue that I would want to propose an amendment to is that it takes away the power of the promoter, which goes against the Bill of Rights. Because from the spirit of this bill, if you see, it tries in various ways by taking back the referendum question to Parliament to frame the question or to approve the frame question. We already have a parliamentary initiative. So if Parliament wants to bring a bill, like I know after this we have a bill that is brought by Honorable Sholay, then we still have that. And then it can also go for referendum if it's an issue that affects certain issues, such as a Bill of Rights. But once an ordinary citizen of Kenya or any other person in Kenya decides to bring an issue that is of concern to them, it's not up to us as a parliament to then reframe it for them, because our understanding is very different. I remember when we were passing the Constitution, when we talked about the freedom of expression, one of us was very explicit, and she said, dress is part of freedom of expression. And we stopped for 2 days discussing whether dress is a freedom of expression or not. So if a Kenyan decides to say that we want to include dress as a right, the way you dress, and then Parliament comes and says, no, frame the question whether it is freedom of expression, you will have taken away that person's right, because inherent in what they were saying was the fact that women are mistreated because of the way they dress. Women are raped because of the way they dress. So they are talking a lot of issues through that expression of freedom of dress. Madam Speaker, the other issue is, again, Honorable Sosion has alluded to it, in terms of the obligations to the public and the promoters. And we must balance in terms of principle so that we don't have people bringing frivolous amendments, yet at the same time that when somebody has brought something that is weighty, that it should not fall by the roadside merely because they can't support it. So there must be a balance between what the promoter can do and what the government can do. Madam Speaker, also just to ensure that we are, as I've said, we are not also bringing frivolous amendments. Madam Speaker, my other concern is that this bill is also loading onerous provisions that are not in the Constitution. Whenever you are bringing a bill to give effect to the Constitution, It should be within the framework of the principles of the Constitution, not outside the principles of the Constitution. If you look at Clause 5 of that bill, especially 5.1a, it says, for purposes of a referendum to amend the Constitution by popular initiative, pursuant to Article 257 of the Constitution, the promoters of a popular initiative shall collect not less than 1 million signatures of registered voters, which is okay because it's constitutional, but then adds that not more than 1/3 shall be from one county, and voters in at least 24 counties shall be represented. I think we are confusing this with the final votes from the counties, this when you go to a referendum. But when it comes to the initial stages, we are actually giving onerous provisions that are not in the Constitution. Madam Speaker, the other issue that I think other members have spoken to is the issue of verification of signatures, that we need to speak to it, Madam Speaker, because we saw when the signatures were taken to the IBC, we had to spend a lot of money in this country, which we didn't need to spend that was running into millions, to verify signatures. And I remember when we brought the OCOA, not OCOA, I can't remember what it was. I think it was OCOA something. OCOA what? OCOA Kenya. OCOA Kenya, I think. When we brought OCOA Kenya the last time, one of the reasons that we were told our signatures were refused is because people even had elephants as signatures. Madam Speaker, constitutionally, there's nothing stopping you from having an elephant as your signature, or even drawing Milio Diambo as your signature. What the IBC ought to do is to verify whether you are a voter, not your signature, because they don't have the mandate, nor the wherewithal or know-how to determine what people's signatures in the countries look like. But they can verify if you are a voter, and that is what we should be providing, not that. Madam Speaker, another onerous issue, I can see we are providing public participation twice. People will have done public participation at counties like they are doing right now, and then when it comes to Parliament, again, public participation. Unless we want to take public participation to Uganda, it's the same people we are doing public participation, and we are making the cost too expensive. Madam Speaker, there's also the provision that gives the President timelines, that when the bill has been taken, then it's given 7 days, but we don't say what happens if the President refuses, because we are not doing this for purposes of this referendum. This bill is for posterity. I doubt it will even apply in this referendum. It won't, Madam Speaker. But should we in the future have a situation where the President decides he doesn't want to forward, what then happens? Let us make a provision that says within 7 days, if he doesn't, he will be deemed to have sent it, and then it will enable it to move forward. Madam Speaker, again, one of the things I don't like is we are saying where counties don't forward their decisions, they will be deemed to have rejected. We are not too sure. To force counties that are paid by taxpayers to sit and make decisions, then if they fail to forward, they shall be deemed to have passed, so that that we are sure that they make a decision one way or the other. Madam Speaker, again, the issue that people have talked about is single or multiple questions. When we talk about single or multiple questions, and we are talking about a bill even in the Constitution, what multiplicity are we talking about? Unless we are talking under Article 1 of the Constitution talks about a bill. And if you give a bill like, let's say, this bill we are talking about right now, what will Kenyans vote about? Are we taking Kenya, turning Kenya, the whole country, into a parliament? And when is there a committee of the whole house? Where will they be saying this one is agreed, that is not agreed? I think then it would mean that we may take about 20 years to just bring one constitutional amendment. Madam Speaker, again, the issue of declaration of results, for me, it's also a concern that we need to have the same standards as are provided in the existing law, and we shouldn't provide new standards. And finally, Madam Speaker, I think because people are very concerned, one of the amendments we can bring is on the commencement period. I support with amendments.
You support with amendments. Very well. Let me have the member nominated, Honorable Oduola Diambo. And members, as a matter of procedure again, the members who have requested to speak to this and you had already contributed, just know that we is not provided for in our standing orders. It's going to be twice to either bill or motion. Very well, carry on.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this bill. Madam Speaker, on the onset, I would like to also indicate that I support the bill, but with some amendments. I start, Madam Speaker, with Section 7 of the bill, Madam Speaker, that is speaking to the need to hold a national referendum in any issue other than a referendum to amend the Constitution. Madam Speaker, when I look at the understanding and definition of referendum, it is really clearly indicating that we need to distinguish when we are talking about making or seeking to make constitutional amendment, which, Madam Speaker, in this case is clearly what we can see, even as we look at the reconciled notes from the two committees. And it separates a referendum from a plebiscite, where we see that you can have an advisory referendum where you really are coming up with the decisions that the government does not even have to act upon, but which really would be room for the citizenry to express some of their desires. And so as I start, Madam Speaker, I think it is extremely important that we get back to the point where, given the sovereignty of the people, in terms of giving them voice, direct democracy, so to speak, it is clear that through popular initiative, the citizenry can come up and provide very specific indications of changes that they would like to see, and following the procedures therein which we are talking about here in terms of gathering signatures that would be sufficient, and having this verified and being carried out in accordance with procedures, then this would be something that would be acceptable. So it is important that we recognize that. Secondly, Madam Speaker, I would like, as I look at this, to agree and see the point in which, as we look at the bill, that we see that because it is a popular initiative, and it is what, in terms of sovereignty of the people, allowing citizens to come up with thoughts that they would want to be brought into law, to ensure that they can now be given an opportunity to be considered, that we do not come with the idea that the bill, after it has been presented by popular initiative, can be redrafted. And in this regard, Madam Speaker, it is clear the joint committee resolution is something that I agree with, because it is useful to keep it as the citizens' popular initiative. Madam Speaker, this links also to the question of framing of the question. And we see, if we are linking, Madam Speaker, which we must, because our Constitution recognizes the sovereignty of the people, and what we are talking about is how indeed the people themselves, in guidance with the law that exists, can express or make clear what they are looking for, then we would see that the promoter or the citizens or those who came up with the popular initiative would really be the ones to have the responsibility, Madam Speaker, of framing the question, and indeed that it should not be something that would be discussed or given to some other body or somebody else. Madam Speaker, the fourth point that I would want to make concerns power that would be seen to be given to the IEBC. When we look at number 8 of the joint committee resolutions, Madam Speaker, I would say that I am in agreement with the resolution that the power to make regulations not be given to IEBC, because, Madam Speaker, as we have said and many members have pointed out, we would like to be sure that we do not then have an atmosphere where, with one hand, we are allowing and giving the citizens enough room through popular initiative to come up with what they would want to see reflected in law or in an amendment, and with the other hand, taking it back through getting IEBC to come up with regulations. Madam Speaker, I do not really have to gainsay and repeat that there is a sense in which, as we even look at the verification of signatures, as was said yesterday by one honorable member, Madam Speaker, it is indeed even a kind of perplexion or wonder to the citizenry in Kenya the manner in which the IEBC would verify signatures, because they do not have a repository of signatures. And as has been indicated, what they would do is really to go by what the referenda requires, that they are able to confirm that what request or petition is brought up is indeed supported by a minimum number of registered voters. So the key issue, Madam Speaker, is that of voters and the verification of whether those who indeed are seeking to make the change by popular initiative are registered voters, and this is indeed the mandate of the IEBC. So I agree with the Joint Committee, and I see that as we look at the bill, we would not want to have the IEBC given power to make regulations. Finally, Madam Speaker, I want to speak to the application of the Elections Act. We see, Madam Speaker, that as we are going to be talking about the referenda, we would want to be sure that we are allowing, as much as is possible, a clear way by which the very idea, the very response, the very answer or choice of the citizenry is captured accurately. And Madam Speaker, in this regard, therefore, it is important that we have a clear application that is provided for, that would enable us to engage the Elections Act, and at the very least ensure that when we are tallying, we are doing this in a way that we can indeed link to what already exists, and not have a situation where we would have an amorphous unit or a new unit or standard such as the county, as opposed to what already exists. Therefore, Madam Speaker, as I support this bill, I support it with amendments, and I support it knowing that we would want to be clear as we come up with law that we are speaking specifically to how it is that we would amend the Constitution, and look at it not as talking about a particular short-term interest as BBI, but, Madam Speaker, our responsibility as members of Parliament is truly to ensure that we come up with legislation that captures the views, the desires, and indeed the needs of the people. So, Madam Speaker, I support with amendments, and I want to thank you.
Very well. Let me have the member for Tongaren, Honorable Simiyu Eseli, who is also serving as the Deputy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker,
Minority
for this chance to also contribute to this debate on the referendum bill. Madam Speaker, this law is timely, given the circumstances that the country is undergoing right now, that as even we speak, the BBI bill is before the assemblies and rapidly moving through the assemblies and making a possibility of a referendum loom large very soon. So it should not catch Parliament flat-footed. We should put in place this referendum bill so that we are able to manage that referendum properly. There are those who have different views as to how the referendum should be conducted. But I realized and I followed keenly the contributions by the chair of the CIOC, the Honorable Jeremiah Kioni. And I realized that he gave a chronology of the processes that his bill of CIOC had gone through and the JLAC bill has gone through. He expressed his reservations in certain matters, but then I was heartened when I remembered that Jeremiah Kioni was part of the 10th Parliament, which in essence was a post-conflict parliament. And we had to make very many bipartisan compromises so that we could move the country forward. And I believe the two committees, JLAC and CIOC, are up to that task, because I've also seen the report of their joint meeting to try and harmonize the two bills. And the fact that they have gone to that extent, I'm confident that by the time we get to the committee of the whole House, they'll be able to bring those amendments they feel are fit to be included in this bill that might have been left out initially. So I have full confidence that given the circumstances, we'll be able to reach proper compromises that will not completely water down the intent of the bill when it becomes law, because the country badly needs this law. Madam Speaker, having said that, I would like to say that the cost of referendum, as has been being bandied by the commissioners at IEBC, was rather worrying. because it appeared like the IEBC is not living in the present-day Kenya, where there's a lot of financial constraints, and everybody needs to cut back on unnecessary expenditures. So I think the IEBC needs to be more realistic in their estimates of the cost of a referendum. I believe that it should be much lower than what they're implying that it should be. The other matter I would like to point out, Madam Speaker, is this issue of public participation. Yes, it's a constitutional right for the public to participate. But then in this case of a popular initiative, as you go out there to get the 1 million signatures, it's no mean feat getting 1 million signatures. Isn't that public participation? Because if you are able to collect 1 million signatures and above, then perhaps the public has participated in this matter. So perhaps when we are looking at a popular initiative, we need to relook at these things, because we can have a blanket law that says there should be public participation in everything. That is all very well. But find out, how did this start? Because if it started by public participation already, then are you still justified to insist that there should be public participation? Because when you're collecting those signatures, there's quite a bit of public participation there. Madam Speaker, I've looked at the bill generally, and I've looked at clause 7, which goes on to say that the county governments may conduct local referenda. That's 7.2. The county government may conduct a local referendum on, among other local issues. Among other local issues. I think we live in this country, and we've seen what happens in the counties. I believe jailer can rise to the occasion and tighten this up a bit, so that we can actually specify exactly what will the county governments be able to go to referendum on in their counties. Because remember, this is also a cost. So we cannot just leave it open, then we might be having referenda on almost everything in the counties. I think we need to tidy this up a bit, so that we are very clear when we say the county governments can have referenda, which referenda are these that the county government can have, and even if we say they are going to use the election law, what part of it and what can they go to referendum for and what can they not go to referendum for. Others will be having 47 referenda in every year from all the 47 counties. So we need to tighten that up a bit. Then the issue of timelines. Madam Speaker, I believe that we need proper timelines in this matter, because if you leave it too open, then you can have some people who are mischievous and delay everything. Because, okay, I noticed that with the JLAC CIOC meeting compromise report, they seem to have tightened up the issues at the court. But otherwise here, in this bill, where they were allowing the appeal court to take 6 months to give their verdict, then I would say that you might end up with, for lack of a better word, judicial filibustering, which is very common in this country. You get tied up in the courts, and you are tied up for good, and you never move. So I think this, the compromise that they'll put it for 30 or so days, I agree with that, because we cannot have such an important, not just the BBI, any referendum for that matter, that has come through public initiative, popular initiative, must be treated as urgent. So we should not allow any delays in our courts of law, which they are very good at. So we need to do something to ensure that the timelines are very tight, so that we do not end up with a lot of delays in the courts. Madam Speaker, otherwise overall, I support the bill and pray that let us rise up to the occasion. Making compromises does not mean that you are weak, if those compromises are for the greater good. I know people still have very strong beliefs, but I never saw any stronger beliefs than what I saw in the 10th Parliament. Yet we were able to make compromises and move forward. And I believe this one occasion where this Parliament can do the same and rise to the occasion. Madam Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Very well. Before I call upon the next member, honourable members, I have members who are not sitting in the designated seats, and some members are too close to each other. There's no social distance, and they're not wearing masks. It does not matter whether you come from the same region, especially in the Eastern. Please let us keep some of the regulations and the arrivals you have made as a house. So please let us put on our mask, let us protect the other member, especially, and sit on the designated seats. And I'm sure you can see it's written seat here. Very well. Let me have the member for Seme.
Really important bill. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this bill. And as I do that, let me first of all thank the two committees, the JLAC committee and the CIOC committee, for their effort in harmonization of the bills that has actually brought a lot of sense into the whole debate. The main object of this bill is really to establish a fair, transparent process for procedures of a referendum, in particular the referendum to amend the Constitution. And therefore, basically, it actually operationalizes and enhances Article 255, which tells us the circumstances under which you need a referendum, 256, which is the parliamentary initiative, very importantly, 257, which is the popular initiative of amending the Constitution. I support this bill, Madam Speaker, because it actually provides very clear procedures. It gives timelines. It provides for committees, for proponents and for opponents, because that gives a much cleaner way of actually debating any referendum that you will have if people are organized in tangible and recognizable groups that are actually registered and are legal by law. And it also provides for the funding. And importantly, it also provides for clear procedures of petitioning the outcome of a referendum. And this is extremely important because referendums are likely to be contested. So far, luckily, we have not had this, and I think we have been lucky that we have had a referendum without having petitions coming forward that would have overturned everything. However, Madam Speaker, there are a few areas that many members have actually talked about that we will need to look at, like the issue of verification of the people, in the million people that are required in the popular initiative. I think the only thing that IBC can be able to do is to verify that the names they have there are registered voters using ID numbers and the register of voters. Because I do not see how they can actually verify what the signatures are. It may be possible technically in the future if we have a single registry, which actually are with signatures that can be available by soft copy to IBC. But as things stand now, I think that is something we look at, and the joint committee of the joint effort of the two committees have actually cleared that, and I support that. I agree with them on that. Madam Speaker, on clauses 7 and 8, it actually implies that, particularly in 7, that actually you can have a referendum on other issues other than amendment of the Constitution. And that in itself may actually be a fairly dangerous thing. In my view, perhaps it would be better to have a clear law on a referendum for amendment of the Constitution, which I think is what we have here. And if there are other referenda that we want to go into, again, we should have a clear law for that. As it is, it implies that, and I've looked at the joint committee, I don't think that has been clearly brought out. And we need to do that. As a member indicated in clause 8, it also implies that counties can actually have local referenda. Again, these are things that we have to look at very carefully, and so that we don't end up with a lot of public expenditure on effort that may actually not be useful the country. Madam Speaker, it also, the provision of the committees, I think I support this because if you have these committees, then you can actually have the leadership on the proponents and the opponents. And this, they will identify their agents, chief agents, local agents, national committees, constituencies committee, so that actually it's an organized procedure and people can take sides whichever they want. And if there's any funding, in my view, there's some referenda that can actually be funded by the state, in which case both sides should actually be funded. I also support this because, Madam, the issue of petitions, again, it gives a clear grounds for petition. It determines it clearly states the procedure for petitioning, who petitions, composition of the bench that is going to look at the petitions. I think I find that extremely important. In clause 15, it also gives the general powers to the commission so that it can, the referendum can be managed on handling of the documents, storing of the documents, appointment officers, administration procedures, and sanction that we actually need. So I think those are really, really important. There is the other issue that comes, that again, the issue of framing of the questions. I agree with the Joint Committee report. The promoters of referendum question are the people to formulate it. People can't sit down, discuss what they want, or if they're promoters or a promoter, go through the process of collecting all those signatures, and then you can say, now that you brought this question, let's have a look at it, whether it is by Parliament or IBC. I think that should be out, and the promoters, as recommended in the joint report, should be given that to do. And I also think that whenever we have a referendum, and I think that we may have to look into, it is important to have one clear question. Even if there are many issues, if they are formulated in terms of a bill, as indicated in the Constitution, then it is easier to have a referendum of a yes and no. I don't see how, even if it's not amendment of the Constitution or any other referendum for which we probably this law does not apply, you are going to have a whole list where this one you say no, and the other one you say yes. Then you will have to have very many committees, each one dealing with each question. So, Madam Speaker, I think that is something that maybe we will have a look at. And finally, I find it very appropriate that it has carefully looked at the consequential amendments, particularly in relation to the Election Act. And therefore, I think when we are through with this, I think it will be a very, very well done law. But it is important to note that at the third reading, I think we'll have a lot of work to do to look at the details that are required to make it what we would like it to be. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very well. Let me have the member for Chepalungu, General Gideon. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. On this referendum bill, the principal object of the bill is to consolidate the law relating to referendum to obtain a clear expression of the will of the people of Kenya. Madam Speaker, this referendum bill
and order. The member who's order.
Helps
the
to tighten up the process.
Order, Honorable Koske. The lady member sat next to you. That seat is not designated. Social distance. Please, can you get... I know you may be consulting. Social distance, yes, thank you. And for all members, please let us keep social distance. The Parliament has taken its initiative, of course, following the pandemic, even to create the social distance. And the seat that you need to sit art or that you can occupy. It's already written, sit here, sit here. Carry on, Honorable.
Thank you, Speaker. I know it's very important for all of us members to follow the regulations given and provided by Ministry of Health. Madam Speaker, this referendum bill has tightened up the process, and that process is the work of Parliament to enact laws that are followed on any referendum laws. I want to comment on what CIOC did. I was a member of CIOC committee during the public participation on this referendum bill. I remember I was among the team that steered up the process through the APO chairman, Honorable Kioni. Madam Speaker, the verification of signatures is very crucial, and it's a procedure. We remember down the lane in this country, Kenya, that we had an nullification of election just simply because of a procedure. So this parliament is very important for all of us to ensure that we follow the procedure that cannot be followed in enactment of this bill, should not be challenged in any court of law. So, Madam Speaker, the threshold should be unified across the counties, whether simple majority or super majority, which is normally 2/3. It should be unified, because from county assemblies, relaying of the results to the IPC, it's very important that we all get a unified formula that is being used. Whether they are being brought by Matatus or Chief OS or the rest, it should be known across the board on how those results are coming to IPC. Madam Speaker, CIOC bill was more of a hybrid before the CHAILAC committee copied. That bill, I want to thank the CIOC specifically for coming up with the referendum bill, which is more inclusive. It includes all the requirements that are we are using now as we amend this bill. I want to urge the House that we move with speed and support this bill, because it's going to help us as we get along. Thank you, Speaker. Maybe to correct what is happening out there, PPI doesn't mean a particular leader in this country, because there's a notion that when you say PPI, you are meaning somebody, you are meaning a certain leader in this country. I think what the debate, the giant thing that we are discussing in this country is about Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020. That amendment bill is for all Kenyans. It doesn't belong to any particular party. It doesn't belong to any particular leader. It's about how we want to have the country going forward rule. And it's very important for all of us to know that this Constitutional Amendment Bill belongs to each and every Kenyan. I support this referendum bill, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Very well. The member for Emuhaya, Honorable Milemba Omboko, next on my request list.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this chance. And thank you for, let me also thank the committee, JLAC and CIOC. And both speakers spoke very calmly about this bill. And especially General Kioni was able to take us down the line of how he had gone about the issue of this referendum bill. And therefore, I think from his speech and what he said, I noticed that this is a process that needed to happen and had to happen at a particular time. And this particular time is now. And therefore, it is well placed before the House for discussion. What I would want to say, Honorable Speaker, is that the forthcoming referendum is a very good chance for us to make a good law for posterity and for everybody. A good law that will actually now deal with every aspect of referendum in a way of actualizing what the Constitution requires, for both the parliamentary process and the public, the public process that is driven by the people themselves. And in this case, the one that shall be coming has been driven by the people themselves. And therefore, I would wish that as we speak on this, and especially when we shall be moving to the third reading, where we shall have to get amendments, that we, the legislators, really look at the law without attaching it to any event that is coming. After all, in this country, we have had 3 referendums or 2, and they were there without this law. But we have been given a chance to make a law that will now make the referendums in this country to be very clear and very straight on how to be conducted. So therefore, a few Kenyans, I would want to remove this fear in them that this law is specifically being made for BBI, for instance. And any legislator who may go that direction so that you lose the real gist of what we want, courtesy of that, I would want to dissuade you from that. I have a background of history and government, and that's what I taught. Between the years 1965-66, for those who care to see, to look at the constitutional amendments in Kenya, they were done hurriedly, and there were very many of them. So when we taught history and government to the children, we told them that all this package of constitutional amendments were actually the Odinga constitutional amendments. This is because that particular time, Jaramogi Odinga was having problems with Jomo Kenyatta. And so many laws were made, including some which we have carried today, including this one of defecting from one party to another and losing your seat. This was part of what we taught as Odinga amendments. And there are quite a number. So I'm dissuading ourselves from imagining that this law we want to make will be specifically for BBI or for an individual, and therefore miss what exactly needs to be done correctly at the expense of that feeling. Because if we do that, then later on we shall require to make amendments, and maybe it will be too late for ourselves. So having said that, I would also want to speak, Honorable Speaker, on the fact that I think we may finally ask the 2 committees, and lawyers are there, I'm not a lawyer myself, to actually clearly specify or include in this law which kind of specifications we may require for referendum that require constitutional amendment, like the one we are now dealing with now, or the one that may just require an advisory of the public to the government and does not require particular action, Honorable Speaker. I think from the background where I come from, as a student of history, we have these 2 terminologies. We have referendum, which will really directly deal with constitutional amendments and requires the government to take action. And therefore, that's why government must invest in it. But then we have plebiscite. Some people, and I even consulted my senior, TJ, but I don't agree with him, the advice he gave me. Plebiscites are usually sometimes called advisory referendums. The government doesn't need to completely take action. It may just take the opinion of the people. And I think many examples were given here on such like matters, including what the Speaker that particular day when we began this debate talked about. So we have to differentiate between the plebiscite and the referendum. And therefore, in this law, we may bring together all the matters that will concern the 2 or have separate laws for plebiscite and a referendum. Having said that, Honorable Speaker, I want to mention just a few of the things that I think possibly would require amendment in the third reading. The first one being the committees that the mover talked about. He seemed to say that the committees should just be split in small groups and not coalesced around one particular individual. I think that will not work for us. But in as much as the committees will be devolved, will be splintered, they must have somebody around whom they operate so that the system will work clearly. So I would want later on for us to look at the committees with an intention of amending that there's a particular or a group or committee that is overall for this particular referendum. Another thing I wanted to speak on is verification of signatures by IEBC. This has been spoken on by many speakers, but I think I have a very different approach on it. Whereas a few speakers just before me have said that you only need to look at whether this man is in the register, I think that will be very weak. Remember when we had the Punguza Mzigo, I think partly Punguza Mzigo lost it because they had just presented names of people who were not within the register. And also some of whom signatures had been forged here and there. So I think it is our business as Parliament, and that's why the law is here, to get a specific way on which we can give IEBC. Let's not surrender our guard simply because that we want to move fast. But if anything, it's not a matter of moving fast because for BBI, it has already gone through the IEBC. But we specifically are tasked to look at what is the best way in which we can make sure that these signatures are verified and we actualize the verification. This I propose even further, Honorable Speaker. It could be through IEBC devolving itself because IEBC is evolved down to the ground. Can't we verify these signatures within the devolved nucleus of IBC, within where we come from, so that we ascertain that they are correct? It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to carry the books to Nairobi. So I want to think members I want to tell members that we need to think widely on the issue of verification with the intention of making a good law and making sure that at no given time will one person, because also governments can be interested in referendums. No one person can come and have it just go through the IBC easily without a certain form of verification. Honorable Speaker, the other thing I wanted to speak on is the county referendums so spoken about. Me, I have no quarrel with those ones. They may arise. The only need that this Parliament needs to do is to make specific laws, guidelines, that will make it not very easy for referendums to become an orgy of the county governments. But at one point, the county governments may require referendums because we have now what we call trading blocks within the counties. And at one point, one county within a trading block may have to decide whether they want to be part of that particular block or they are not part of that particular block. So let's not quickly just pass it out that we don't want many referendums from counties. This may arise and might require the participation of counties at that particular level. But we make it difficult and procedural on how to reach the issue of those counties. Honorable Speaker, I also want to speak on the issue of public participation. Public participation is crucial. And you notice,
order.
yes, you know, I could not stop until I hear
Yes,
from
but there's this member who is actually from me, you're making noise. You cannot shout point of order from where you sit, honorable member. You know the procedures of the House. Carry on, honorable member. In fact, you're out of order. You need to press intervention members.
Thank you. Let me go back
from
to the standing orders
Okay,
and
carry
that.
on.
Thank you. I wanted to speak on the issue of public participation. Public participation, let's just...
Now let me hear. Okay, now let me hear. Let me hear. You know, it is an evening sitting. Honorable member of Emuhaya. We have the member for Bomachoge Borabu. Honorable Ogutia Bell, who's
Thank
now
you, Honorable Speaker. It's
Yes.
unfortunate that I'm making this point of order very late, that the member is speaking on the floor without the mask.
Yeah, that is your observation. Yes. Please, honorable member, that is an observation.
But, Honorable Speaker, the person who talked about me not having a mask,
It was also
did
not
you
wearing-
notice he did not have a mask?
I noted that he had, but
Terrible. But anyway, I have mine on now.
very well.
So
I could
finally,
see I could
let
see
me-
you sipping some water, and I could tell you could not sip the water from there. Order.
I need all
Honorable
this
Shamil, I think
time
there's nothing
wasted,
out of
honestly.
order.
I'm
Honorable
just
member
speaking
for-
on the law.
Honorable member for my Bomachoge Borabu raised a concern, and which I did say that. Honorable member, please, from where we sit, we must protect each other. Then with that, is it a point of order, point of information? Sorry, point of information. Then the point
To
of
inform
information. Honorable, you're not the speaker. Let me hear. Honorable Shamila nominated. You're on intervention. Please, can you state what you're in point of order?
Point of information, Madam Speaker.
You're on point of information, okay. As a matter of procedure, the honorable member. You want me to call you Mwalimu? Do you want to be informed by the honorable?
No, I'm responding to the point of order that was raised by...
My time.
No, I've already dealt with that. I've already dealt with that. You cannot respond. Is it a different point of order? A point of information, point of order. Who do you want to inform?
Oh,
Whom do you want to inform?
the member of parliament who issued the point, who stood up on a point of order.
Which one now?
Just, Madam Speaker, it's with regards to the COVID regulations on the wearing of masks.
No, unless you just want to make a contribution that. You want to inform who? So that we can understand.
The House. You don't want to be involved.
I have made a ruling that social distance, for
Yes.
example, Honorable Shamila, you are not wearing a mask. Yes, that's... And for that matter, I want to invite the leader of majority to just understand what this House passed. The leader of majority, just resume your seat again. Honorable member for Mwaya, I know I... Yes, but there was, yes.
I already contributed to this.
Any comments
And
on that?
I was just hoping that the
Honorable Shamil.
two wrongs, or in fact a third, don't make a right. And I think the whole point of wearing masks is not for your own protection.
Exactly.
It's for our protection. Yeah?
Very well.
So I think if one can't, then they're at liberty to be in the open air. But so long as we are here and air is circulating, it's important that we all protect one another.
We all protect one another. Honorable Shamila, what did you want to say? Because I could see you agitating.
Yes, Madam
But
Speaker.
please, can you put on your mask?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I think one of the most diligent people when it comes to ensuring that COVID regulations have been met has been myself. And the reason that we have the social distancing is to ensure that we don't have people or persons in front of us, because actually if you're not wearing a mask, you can, the saliva can spread at X number of meters. Having said that, that is why we are placed the way we have been placed. And it is difficult sometimes to have your mask on. In fact, once you're sitting at your place, and that is why we are having the spraying before and after. I think that as long as you sit where you are and you remove your mask and talk, I'm certain, then we can. Otherwise, we sit here, there is no air conditioning, and it gets hot, it gets stuffy for all of us and extremely uncomfortable. So at the point where I'm standing and addressing the National Assembly, it would be fine. It's another thing if I'm walking around and exposing other people who are within at least 3 to 4 feet in front of me, then I should be wearing a mask. But at this point where I'm sitting and we have designated seats, I beg your pardon?
You, Honorable Shamala, because it was by discretion, having listened to you, we have not changed the rules. The rules have not been changed. And that's why I invited the leader of majority just to make a comment. And you're aware, if we make rules in the House, you overturn them differently. So we have not changed the rules. And of course, all this, as the leader of majority did say, just to protect each other. Because we are members, we don't want to make rules and also break them. So if you want to change the rules, you can change in the best way. You know, there's a procedure. And a communication, as it was done by the substantive speaker on the same matter, can be passed. But for now, the rules have not been changed. Remember, we are not protected from the pandemic. In fact, I would feel very bad when I would have Honorable Shamala being the one to give it to the member for, let me say, the leader of majority. So let us protect each other. So that was a good observation by the member. And yes, Honorable Member for Mwaya, please carry on.
Yeah, thank you. So then I wanted to speak on the issue of public participation.
And for that, you had 2 minutes. I've added you 1 more minute.
And I think that public participation should be duly done and just done well as per our laws, constitution. I heard earlier speakers think that we may even get some shortcuts because of one thing or another. But I noticed, as I've been following, that even in places like Baringo, just side, where we thought that this could not be a problem, there are people who have gone to court because of the same public participation. So you may notice that if we don't follow it correctly because it's with our constitution, then it may end up gagging us or making our process stall because we did not just follow the law. Honorable Speaker, without much ado, I support.
You support very well. Let me have the member for North Hall, the Honorable Nganya Chachu, next on my request list.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand to support the referendum bill number 14 of 2020. Madam Speaker, as a country, for sure, we need a referendum law to guide us when we're dealing with matters referendum. Madam Speaker, as of now, we don't have a law to really guide us on this. We have been using the Election Act and other relevant laws, but Madam Speaker, we don't have one, and we have come of age, and it's time we have one, and we have been having a few in the past. Madam Speaker, I really want to appreciate the work of the Jailer Committee. They did an amazing job. Their report is very informative. And Madam Speaker, I was here when Senior Counsel Honorable Atende Omolo moved the motion. It was really well done, well researched, and we are well informed. Madam Speaker, I really wish CIOC and Jailer committees, which are the parliamentary committees of this House, are able to harmonize their report and guide us, this House, especially at the committee stage. Madam Speaker, as we make this law, this referendum law, and it's the first one we are doing.
Honorable Chachu, so that we don't, yes, I wish you can put on your mask because you're sat next to.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for your guidance. Madam Speaker, we are making a precedent. We are making the first law to guide referendum in this nation. And we are doing it for posterity. We are doing it for generations to come. We are doing it for the current situation as well as future situations that this country might face. In this regard, Madam Speaker, it's very important that we are holistic and we look at all the perspectives that are required to inform this law. Madam Speaker, I've had members contribute on this floor of this House. I've been in all the 3 sessions that we have had, including this one. Madam Speaker, we seem to agree on almost everything. We seem to have unanimity on almost everything, except when it comes to the framing of the question. And Madam Speaker, it's critical that we look at both reports, CIOC report, Jailer Committee report, and we harmonize these 2 reports. And the leadership of this House, and Honorable Kimunya is here, should help us, guide us on this. Because you can have a very good law that we do it for posterity and not prevailing political circumstances of the day. We are lawmakers and we are making laws for posterity. Madam Speaker, we have to be holistic on this. When we are framing these questions, or when we are passing this legislation, let's look at this country. Let's look at the interests of the country today and for decades to come. Let's not look at what is likely to happen next year or the following year. Madam Speaker, if it is the will of this House or of this nation that we have multiple choice, so be it. If we feel we are better off with a singular question, so be it. But let us debate and look at what is good for this country, and as I will repeat it again, for posterity. Madam Speaker, let's be informed by what happens in other jurisdictions, what happens in other countries, what happens in other modern democracies. Let's learn from them and be informed by them. Referendums are very common in the United States. They are very common in Western Europe. And we should get a lead from them and inform our laws, of course, looking at, tailoring them to our own circumstances in light of our own constitution. Madam Speaker, as we look into this issue, let's take a hard look, and let's look at this country from every corner of it. We are going to inform what will be done at the county level by county assemblies, what we'll be doing here in the Parliament, in both houses, and it's very, very important that we carry everybody on board. Madam Speaker, my major point here is harmonization of those 2 reports and ensuring that, Madam Speaker, we don't have a contested bill, or maybe when it comes to a committee stage, we have to have a contested provisions here, and we are forced to take a side, or we are forced to vote on an issue that could easily that can easily be resolved if we have able leadership in this House. Madam Speaker, I beg support.
You support very well. Let me have the member now for Bomachoge Borabu to contribute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity also to make some remarks on this amendment bill. Madam Speaker, I want to agree with what has been said and with what is in the Constitution. That the purpose of this amendment is to ensure that the democracy of this country is improved. And I hope that we are making a step-by-step amendments so that looking forward to years to come, for the generations that are yet to come, that they will enjoy the foundation of democracy that this parliament has contributed to. Madam Speaker, we know that according to Article 1 of the Constitution, it's very clear that all sovereign power belongs to the citizens of this country. Now, mine will be two concerns. Concern number one is about how well, in making this amendment, have we taken into account people with a disability? And this is a group of people in Kenya who sometimes have missed participating in constitutional changes and even in voting. And looking through this document, I don't see whether an amendment has been made to ensure that people with disability are equally, their voices, and also their votes contribute to the democratization of this country. Madam Speaker, you know that even from previous elections, majority of these people are left out because the voting stations are too far, or because there is nobody to assist them to get the voting station. And even when they get the voting station, they also have challenges. I want also to assume that the majority of people in this country, especially the adults who are illiterate, could also be considered in this category of disadvantaged people. In a system where the people's capacity to make decisions is not well considered, like we have in Kenya, I think we have a lot of manipulation. And this is what we see during elections. This is what we may see during the referendum. People being coerced to participate in a referendum where they hardly understand the issues, where they hardly are capable to contribute the issues. And that's why I want to join some of the members in this House who have said that we really need to think on how to promote civic education using the various social media, even the FM radios, and even all the other media, to ensure that even if we have to use the vernacular, to ensure that our people are brought on board and they all understand what they're doing and they all understand what's happening in this country. Madam Speaker, you might be surprised to learn that a number of people in this country right now don't know anything about the amendments we are talking about. The various political transformations, the BBI, they may not know just because they have no access to the right information. Finally, Madam Speaker, I want to say that technology is at our fingertips, but we don't seem to embrace it to ensure that we can promote some of these weaker areas when it comes to the referendum and also to voting. We have come up with the costs that sometimes are very worrying just because we have ignored to embrace the technology that's available with us. Madam Speaker, I want to say that electronic voting has been a good indication on how much we can cut down the costs. And I believe that it's necessary as a government, we invest more in this and ensure that this cuts across all the sectors and all the communities and all the groups. Because I know that even when we talk about electronic voting, come 2022, we will even have communities that have no access to this voting because either there is no power or the power transmission is not sustainable. Madam Speaker, I want to say that we want to move forward as a country to ensure that these exercises are inclusive. So we must think on how to bring on board those disadvantaged groups, which go beyond the physical disadvantages, mental disadvantages, to what we call the ability to the literacy disadvantages. With those few remarks, I support.
Very well. And now we have the member for Taita Taveta, the Honorable Mzigi Munene.
Madam Speaker, I thank you. I'm going to be very brief because I was holding on to the next business. But nevertheless, I also want to say that I will support this bill with amendment because I believe this bill is not about, it's not only about BBI, but in the future it can also guide the country on different matters that may need referendum. Therefore, I thank you for this opportunity.
Very well. The member for Mukurweini, the Honorable Kiai Githioka. The member for Mukurweini.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I stand to support the bill. Madam Speaker, I'm a member of Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, and I want to commend the joint report by CIOC and JLAC on the issue. We spent many hours, put a lot of time in going through all this, and what we came up with, I'm very proud of. And Madam Speaker, Article 1 of the Constitution clearly says that all the sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. The same article, subsection 2, says that that power can be exercised directly or indirectly. Directly by the people or indirectly through their representatives who are duly elected. This is the best way to show democratic space to our people. And this is one of the best methods of exercising that direct sovereign power as bestowed upon the people of Kenya by the Constitution. Madam Speaker, we came up with a very comprehensive bill that intends now to fill in the vacuum insofar as matters of referendum are concerned. You realize that there exists not a law that covers this new phenomenon that is known as referendum. And it's good to indicate here and now that this law is not about the forthcoming referendum. This law is for posterity. It's meant to guide and also structure the way referendums are carried out in this country. And if you look at this bill, it has provided different types of referendum. Indeed, the bill provides for the procedure on the conduct of the referendum, the different types of referendum, whether at the county level, whether at the country, national government level. It also provides of how do you go about giving out the notice when you want to hold a referendum. It also provides for the committees that are meant now to, carry out the referendum work, both at the national level and at the constituency level. Also not forgotten is the power of the courts. If you have any issue about the way the referendum is carried out, you can go to court, and the court is also given a procedure and timelines upon which to ensure that the issues that are before court do not drag forever and ever. There are timelines, and they are very reasonable if you look at them. And even when it comes also to petitioning the courts about the matters that can be contested in court, the amount of money that one is supposed to deposit, sale for security, of course, is also quite reasonable. What we have done as the joint committees is to provide this parliament with a general framework upon which now we can come up with a comprehensive law that will guide this country today and in future about how to conduct referendum. And I want to say that if there are any issues that maybe the committees never touched on or they were never comprehensively covered. We have a chance at the third reading whereby we can now tune up what is before the House and make sure that we have the best referendum law in the world. The general mood of this House is that indeed we need a referendum law. And this is the chance now to make it better. This is the chance now to have one. This is the chance to ensure that this country is guided by law. And particularly, once we do this law, we'll have the best chance to test it during the forthcoming BBI referendum, if at all it happens. I stand to support. Thank you very much.
Then we have the member for Kandara, Honorable Wahome Muthoni.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for that opportunity to speak to this bill. Madam Speaker, I agree with the colleagues that have spoken before that this bill at this particular time is very timely, taking into account that we are talking about a referendum possibly in the offing, and therefore, Madam Speaker, we are quite in order to come up with this proposal. When this bill was being discussed in the committee, I was serving as a member of JLAC, but I happened to be one of those who were undemocratically axed from that committee. But I'm familiar, Madam Speaker, with the contents of this. And I've also listened to my colleagues contributing to the bill. I'm in agreement with some things, but I would also want to reiterate on others, considering that, Madam Speaker, there is a bill there in the country. I have listened, for example, to Junet on the floor. I think he needed to disabuse himself from his bill because he's a promoter. According to him, although, Madam Speaker, if you asked me, that bill is erroneously and fraudulently being promoted by Waweru and Junet. I say that without any doubt of contradiction or fear of contradiction, because, Madam Speaker, the bill has been using the public funding, and if it was using public funding, initially promoted by His Excellency the President and the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, I think it would be in order for that bill should have been actually a government bill, if there is something like a government bill. And you see, it being a popular initiative, if there was a law that was moving that particular process, then it would have been safely called a popular initiative. So therefore, Madam Speaker, the other thing I wanted to contribute or to react to is the statement by Junet that because he feels he's the promoter of the bill, while contributing to this bill, that whoever wants can come up with their bill. Madam Speaker, the bill now is in the public domain. The referendum bill is, the constitutional amendment bill is in the public domain.
Yes,
it belongs to the public, Madam Speaker. And
order, even as I listen to you and as this has been a house of debate, Honorable Wahome, you cannot mention a member without bringing a substantive motion.
Which member?
You are talking about Honorable Waweru, and you also are talking about
the
order, but the referendum bill that is before me.
Madam Speaker,
the referendum
the Hansard will bear me witness. Those names were mentioned by the Honorable Junet when he was debating. So I'm reacting.
Yes, but I want also to make a point of for the other members, because they also need to make a contribution to this, so that
Madam
does not
Speaker,
go out there. The bill being.
Madam Speaker, may I move?
The referendum bill number 2, National Assembly Bill number 14 of 20, that is in motion. Order number 8 is what we are debating on members, and this bill was moved by the chairperson.
Madam Speaker, I think I don't want my time to be
Just for
taken too much.
confirmation. No, it is
and
important
I
for me.
appreciate.
Yes, it is important for me to inform the members so that you cannot.
Yeah, I'm
miss
not
them.
confusing. I believe
So
members
check on. We are on order number 8.
Madam Speaker.
Very well, carry on, Honorable.
Madam Speaker, I'm
Honorable
quite
Wahome.
aware of the bill that we are discussing, and it is important that when members start to debate, the Speaker, who is actually a neutral arbiter, allows free and fair debate. I'm reacting to debate that has occurred on the floor of this House, and thank you very much for allowing me to proceed. Madam Speaker, this bill proposes even for multiple choices and options. It also proposes for one question. And I think there were concerns that allowing a multiple question may not be a good route. The people who have those concerns, Madam Speaker, are limited by the fact that there is a bill there in the air or a referendum that is coming, instead of looking into the future and coming up with a legislative bill or proposal that will actually take care of a proper process. Madam Speaker, once again, I think those kind of fears are misplaced. When I look at the question of public participation, you know, even breathing is a challenge. Madam Speaker, Madam, I know there are rules, Madam Speaker. What I'm saying, Madam Speaker, I don't like taking it out because I think we should secure ourselves and each other. Madam Speaker, I'm saying the question of public participation and verification of signatures. Public participation, Madam Speaker, is a constitutional requirement. And therefore, once a bill has been released, it is not possible that now we stand here on the floor of the House and talk about curtailing public participation. I think let us be reasonable as we even debate this law. I think it is important to allow free, fair, open, candid public participation for bills. You have seen, Madam, I have seen, Madam Speaker, that there has been a lot of disturbance and a lot of effort to curtail very good order in terms of the debate out there. We have seen even threats. We've seen people being disrupted. And I think with this kind of law, Madam Speaker, we are likely to put some sanity in the process as we move forward. So I am very happy that we have this bill, and I'm hoping that we can be able to clear it very quickly so that we can be able to tidy the business of the referendum that is likely to happen, because there is already a bill. The reason why we are having some of those challenges, Madam Speaker, is because there was no law. And one of my greatest concerns has been that we are moving with such an important process without a legislative framework. And therefore, the problems and challenges that the proponents of the bills outside there have been having, Madam Speaker, is because there was no legal framework. So we needed as a House to move very quickly so that we can have the framework in place. So verification of signatures, it cannot be overstated or understated, Madam Speaker, because it is known that you can actually forge people's signatures to fix on your bill or on your million signatures required. So we have, while we are making this law, to think about how to protect the sanity, to protect the integrity of the process so that whoever finds their signatures there is not by accident, but they are the ones who have fixed that signature. So for me, I think I would want this bill to take care of that very much. Then the question of the timelines, between 7 days and 30 days, depending on the activity. Again, that is a very good thing in this bill, Madam Speaker, because again, we cannot have activities that are not guided by timelines. And I'm also looking, Madam Speaker, at the work of the CIOC. I think they did also a great job. It's good to commend members when they have worked hard. The bill anticipates that there can be more than one question. And therefore, let us encourage that, because tomorrow, looking at how we are moving, it may be necessary, Madam Speaker, that there could be more than one valid questions. And when you look at this bill, it's also talking about the fact that there can even be more than one bill, Madam Speaker. So therefore, let us not be limited. And even the options, the choices are important as a democratic process. This is a very key process, Madam Speaker, and therefore anticipating that you can even have several questions that are not intertwined necessarily, but that because there will be huge cost, then you can have more questions and more bills in a process where you are likely to spend a lot of money, but deal with these various issues.
You've already consumed your time, the member for Kandara. She was the former vice chair. Where I said, Honorable Member, it's a house of debate. It's a house debate. Honorable Member, you already consumed your time. We don't want to break our own procedures. And you've been a lawyer. You know it very well to break laws. Members, this is a house of debate, and it is important. And that's why I was she said we took time for me as a speaker to remind you, for those who have not been able to either read or visit any other material, that the bill before us is from the Chairperson, Department Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs, which the Honorable Member was a former Vice Chair. She said it very well. So that's how it came to be an asset of the House. So let me have the member for Kitutu Masaba, the Honorable Shadrach Mose. Honorable Shadrach Mose.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me a chance to also add my voice to this very important bill. And from the outset, Madam Speaker, I want to very clearly indicate that I support. And I would also, Madam Speaker, also indicate that a few amendments will be necessary, particularly at the third reading, so that we can input and ensure that the referendum bill is one that would serve this country right. Madam Speaker, one of the aspects that I want to say this bill is going to help us is that it is transparent, and we will provide a fair process to ensure that the expression of the will of the people of Kenya is heard and actually appreciated. So that, Madam Speaker, this will be really a milestone in this country, that we will have a standalone law that will guide the process. Madam Speaker, you will realize that what has been helping us in this country is the Election Act of 2011. And that has had serious loopholes. But as we discuss and deliberate on this bill, Madam Speaker, it is extremely important that this is one of the laws that would have stand alone, that it would actually guide the process of a referendum, particularly now that we are about to have a referendum, Madam Speaker. This would actually assist this country so that we have a law.
Member for Larry, your Honorable Member for Kitutu Masaba. The member for Larry, you were on an intervention. Or is your card working well? He has already moved it. Okay, carry on, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So that as we have this stand-alone legislation, which actually the Constitution empowers us as legislators to enact, so that it would provide for the conduct of elections, it would provide for conduct of a referenda. And Madam Speaker, this kind of legislation that will come up is one that would actually be simple, it would be clear, it would be straightforward, so that it provides a chance to the Kenyans who would want to express themselves without delving into a lot of the legal intricacies, so that the issues that are raised are issues, Madam Speaker, that will take into account also the issue of special interest groups like people living with disabilities. So, Madam Speaker, this, I would actually want to say that the committee that dealt with this, and even the IBC itself, were in agreement that there are serious loophole in regard to legislation that would guide the process of, for example, referendum in this country. So, Madam Speaker, today is a perfect opportunity for us as legislators to ensure that this particular process is one that is going to help this country. Because, Madam Speaker, the law that we have been having, that is the Election Act 2011, has always remained ambiguous and not coming out clearly as to how we should handle this process. Madam Speaker, this particular legislation, this bill, also provides what I will call a number of options, so much so that, Madam Speaker, that even when we are talking of the various choices, it provides for multiple choices, so that any of our people who are looking at the various issues would settle on those issues that they think they are comfortable with, and leave out those ones that are unclear to them. So that, Madam Speaker, the passage or the part of ensuring that we legislate on this would actually give a clear guideline for us as a country, and it would also assist the Kenyan citizenry, the Kenyan populace, to ensure that we have order, we have proper freedom, we have that democratic right to express yourself. With those remarks, Madam Speaker, I support.
Very well. Let me have now the member for Lari, the Honorable Mwangi Mburu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me also that chance to support the bill. I also commend the CIOC and JLAG for coming up with this bill, because now we are at the times when we need to test the bill. So I'm happy that they have come up with this bill, because as we are going into this process, we'll have something to guide us. I'm also happy that within the bill, the sovereignty of the people is really captured, because we are talking about a bill to amend the Constitution through a popular initiative as per Article 257. So I'm happy because the people of Kenya will also have an opportunity to give their democratic space and to show their democracy and participate in a referendum which is well guided by the law. I'm a bit concerned about Section 7, as Millie had said. I don't know whether, if the speakers of the two houses do not receive a response from the county assembly within the 3 months stipulated under Article 257 of the Constitution of the bill, it will be deemed as not approved. I wish that we had said that it will be deemed as approved, so that we give people who are ignorant a chance that they have to participate in a process, rather than just ignore and leave it like that. So I thought it should read as, it should be deemed as approved in respect of that county assembly. That is just a part. I'm happy about this bill because it also provides for procedures before the conduct of a referendum, the way a referendum question will be presented, the way it should be acted by the houses. I'm also very happy about this bill because it also outlines about other referendums, which we didn't have before. Other referendums, and we say that we can have other acts of parliament to guide on those referendums. So when this JLAG and CIOC were on this one, I believe they were on the correct path. On the other part where we are talking about multiple questions and all that, I think this bill is very clear, and it is saying, to the extent possible, all opinions and recommendations that are not divergent shall be contained in a single bill. So I think even when we are coming to a question, rather than confusing most of the Kenyans, the question should be straightforward to most of the Kenyans. If where there is an amendment to the Constitution, where there is a divergent opinion, I think a separate bill should come in. So for that one, I support the bill, I support its timeliness, and I support that it's coming at a time when we need to pass this BBI like yesterday. I'm also happy about most of the county assemblies, the way they are passing BBI. Because as many may say that they are being muzzled to it, I don't think when you have a lot of counties passing BBI day and night, they are being muzzled to it. I think it is popular. I think they could be muzzled not to pass it. But when they are passing it day and night, I think it is the will of the people that is prevailing. And I'm also believing that the same message is going to the ground to everybody, so that when we come to the referendum, it will be an uncontested one, the one that will pass early in the morning, and then we can move on now to think about the 2022 elections. With those few and many remarks, I support the bill. Thank you.
Let me have the member for Emurua Dikri, Honorable Kipyegon Ngeno.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also wish to rise to support this particular bill. Madam Speaker, remember that this referendum bill has been on the lips of members of parliament for a long time. It's only that it has never had an opportunity to be dealt with. Madam Speaker, we have had glamour for referendums. Initially, there was a referendum, an initiation for a referendum, I don't know, it was called Okoa Kenya, and then there was another one, but then we never had any law to guide us on those particular proceedings. And Madam Speaker, yes, there was a Punguza Mzigo, and which never went through. Madam Speaker, I think the glamour for this one now is based majorly on the referendums that maybe are lying ahead of us. And I believe that we are doing this one in good faith, not for the BBI, but for the posterity, for the many referendums that we might be having in this country. Madam Speaker, I wish to state that under Chapter 1, Article 1 of the Constitution, Madam Speaker, the sovereign power belongs to the people of this republic, and it is vested on the elected leadership. Madam Speaker, the supremacy belongs to the people of Kenya. It is them who will decide on so many things. It is them who decide to send us here and to recall us. It is them who makes the decision on this particular part of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, Article 2 tells us that nobody should claim authority or exercise state authority except as authorized by the Constitution. This one, I'm saying this, Madam Speaker, because there are so many people who have abrogated themselves as if they are the Constitution by themselves. As if you want to change the Constitution of this law, of this country, it has to be through either one of them. Madam Speaker, I want them to read Article 2 and know very well that no one is authority above the law. No one is authority above the Constitution. It's the Constitution that provides us or gives us those authorities that are vested on us. So even as we are approaching the change of the Constitution, people must know that it is not their obligations and to change or to force people to change parts of this Constitution. Madam Speaker, I wish to, in this particular amendment, I wish to comment on the part of the 1 million signatures. Madam Speaker, I think we have had several issues on the collection of 1 million signatures. Many people have been complaining that some of the signatures which have been actually or which are being perused on daily basis, some of them are collected through dubious means, through unscrupulous methods. Madam Speaker, I think we should also include in this particular amendment a situation, in this particular law, a situation where the collection of the signatures must be done by a credible body, not by individuals. Madam Speaker, so that we can have the true signatures that will that we verified, Madam Speaker, will be the true signatures of the people of Kenya. Number two, Madam Speaker, is on the question of, and this referendum law, I mean, the referendum itself, Madam Speaker, is like the election, and it must follow the election rules. It must abide by the election rules, Madam Speaker, and therefore, the electoral rules that are in the Constitution must be, or everybody must abide by those particular electoral rules. Madam Speaker, because they're being done by IEBC, the other rules which are actually on the electoral, like the electoral offenses, Madam Speaker, must be followed. Like the question of bribery, which is on Article 8, where it talks about the elections must be free and fair, they must be free of corruption and must be free of intimidation. Madam Speaker, what we are seeing in our county elections, I mean in our county discussions on this particular referendum bill, Madam Speaker, is corruption. What we are seeing is bribery. And I don't know if everybody knows that the question of giving MCS 2 million to pass this particular law is bribery, and it is against the law. The question of intimidating MCAs who votes no, Madam Speaker, is against the law. That is intimidation, and it is under Article 8 of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, we are shocked that today members of the County Assembly of Baringo have been summoned to Integrity Center to go and answer as to why over several allegations. But Madam Speaker, we all know it is because they refused to pass that particular law. Madam Speaker, that is intimidation, and that is against the electoral laws, and that one must be noted. Madam Speaker, and many others, which we have seen during the process of this BBI document. Madam Speaker, there is also the question of whether we should include in our discussion several questions on the referendum or one question where you answer yes or no. Madam Speaker, if the law, if there is a part of the Constitution that needs to be amended so that we can have multiple choice questions, Madam Speaker, we have opened the Constitution for amendment, so we can still open that part of the Constitution so that it allows the country to vote on a multiple choice question. And there is nothing that can prevent anyone, just like nothing is preventing anybody from amending this Constitution. So nothing can prevent us from amending that part of the Constitution, which says we must have multiple choices. Madam Speaker, if it is not even in the Constitution, if we can do that amendment in this particular proposal, this particular referendum law, Madam Speaker, we have the power and the authority to do that amendment so that we can change, so that we can have a law that can allow for multiple choice question. Madam Speaker, the last part of what I want to talk about is clause 11, which is talking about the campaigning for or against the law. Madam Speaker, there is a contradiction in some parts of this clause, where it is stating that the committees which will be formed for or against the referendum should fund themselves. Madam Speaker, I think this is an electioneering process. Every election in this country is funded by the state. Madam Speaker, parties are funded by the states. I wonder why the referendum, which is a very fundamental part of change of the constitution of this country, cannot be funded, especially the campaigning part of it. So, Madam Speaker, I will also be bringing an amendment to ensure that those who will be leading the no campaign against the referendum, or those who will be leading the no, because it is the state that will be leading the yes. Madam Speaker, then, for those who will be leading the no, we don't know yet, must be funded by the taxpayer, just like they are being funded by the government as they are leading the yes campaign.
The member for Emurwadikiri, Honorable Kipiegon Ngeno.
Yes, Madam.
You are the one on the floor, and you will have a balance of 3 minutes to speak to the same.
Most obliged.
And we'll give you priority in speaking.
Yes.
Because we must also follow the procedure.
Most obliged.
Very well. Other members, I must appreciate the members who are ready to debate on the same. Noting the member for Dagoret South. The other members have just removed your card intended to speak to this. And members, the time being 9 p.m., this House stands adjourned until the Tuesday, 23rd February 2021 at 2:30 p.m. I thank you.